All right, greetings all. I'm Andy Singleton, People's Pen on Twitter. I'm joined with a buddy of mine, some might say brother from another mother, Mr. Tehol Beddict, of the Elder Gods of Razzball fame. Mr. Beddict, how are you?
Greetings. I'm doing well, man. It's good to be back live on TV. I've seen your success with Hanging Einstein, and I can't deny that I've been sort of jealous about it, sort of envious ever since we parted ways with Douglas Moore and Peyton Sanders and some of these other folk. But I can't thank you enough for bringing me back in the fold.
Well, we have a kinship that cannot be matched or duplicated. So these are going to be some baseball videos we're going to try to do. We are working with the Fantasy Doctor again. We're going to introduce some players. We're going to go over some of our own beliefs and feelings about these said players, and then maybe some other players that we feel like discussing or bringing up. We have no real rhyme or reason to these yet. We're going to try to figure out these as we go. So hopefully some people will give us some feedback, tell us what they liked, what they didn't like, what worked, what didn't work. Other players
my followers, sorry to interrupt. My followers love to tell me what I do wrong. That's what they like to do to me. They like to bash me. They like to make fun of me. So I'm sure they'll find some good material on here to tell me what I did wrong or what I said was idiotic. But I love it.
Well, absolutely, and I think that's the only way we can really give the people what they want. So we're going to start off with 3 injured players who may or may not be affecting your minds and your rosters heading into this 2016 season. I'm talking about Lance McCullers, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Corey Seager, the best young thing not named Carlos Correa, owed to the signed baseball right here. But as I mentioned, we got the fantasy doctor, Dr. Selene Parekh. We're going to see what he has to say. So why don't you go ahead and cue up that Lance McCullers video, and let's see what he says. Lance McCullers was reported to be starting the season on the disabled list with some concerns about his throwing shoulder. So is this something the doctor thinks we should be worried about?
This is Dr. Selene Parekh, the fantasy doctor. Houston Astros pitcher Lance McCullers is starting this year on the DL list because of a right shoulder strain. Back in early March, he had strain during the second batting practice of the season, and an MRI revealed no structural damage. Now that's great news for Astros fans, but it's a bad thing in terms of knowing exactly what to expect from him. McCullers is going to get back onto the mound. The timeline is a little bit suspect because you push him too soon. That could lead to increased pain and even some instability or some tendonitis and even tears of the rotator cuff, depending on where his pain is coming from. The fact that there's no structural damage is a good thing. There are no tears or ligamentous issues that can be appreciated on the MRI as per reports. So if they take him slow, they give him the time, and maybe even do some shoulder injections with rehabilitation and working on throwing mechanics, he should return to the lineup sometime before the All-Star break. Look for the Astros to push him slowly, follow him along, and see how he does. As long as his velocity stays up and his pitching control stays good, he should be able to increase his innings. This is Dr. Selene Parekh, the fantasy doctor.
That sounded kind of bleak to me.
Yeah, that sounded real bleak. Is this what's really happening? I just drafted McCullers in my draft last night. Granted, I drafted him real late, and I'm thinking it was going to work out for me. But to the All-Star break, shoulder injections. I mean, from what I read, I thought he just had a little bit of shoulder soreness. I'm like, no structural damage. Who cares? Like, this guy's good to go. He's just a little sore. They're being cautious. He's a young dude. But Dr. Selene Parekh, the legend, the stepfather I never had but always wanted, is breaking it down for me, and now I'm totally shook. He's been right on par with basically everything he's ever said on the football show. I mean, I can't deny. I mean, I took him late, so I'm not mad about it. But yeah, that's somebody to obviously avoid. I did not think it was going to be that long. I thought it was just I didn't even know. I thought opening day was still a possibility for the dude.
Yeah,
or a short DL stint to start the season, like the first week or two of the season. That's all I thought.
Who actually wants a stepfather? You said the stepfather you've never had that you always wanted. Who actually wants a stepfather? Like, you wanted your parents to split up? Like, that doesn't even make any sense to me. But speaking to Lance McCullers,
another story for another day.
All right. Well, yeah, hopefully we'll get to that day. But McCullers, All-Star break, man, this kid's like 22. He rose to fame out of complete obscurity. Unless you're a prospect town like myself, you probably didn't even know this guy existed until he came up last year and struck everybody out. But, I mean, the point being is he always had control issues. That was always the thing with him. He kind of settled that down last year. You're kind of excited about another young arm on this young, exciting Astros team. But, from what I was hearing, people were more concerned that this was just, to try to protect his innings limit more so than anything to really be worried about. The no structural damage, great. That's exciting and good news. But, man, that kind of scares me to hear maybe some injections. Now, I don't know if he's speculating or if this is stuff he's heard about injections or whatever. But I mean, personally, I'm not fearing drafting McCullers, but man, that's a little worrisome.
I mean, quote me in my fantasy draft last night in the chat room. I said I took McCullers and Jonathan Shoop or something like back to back with like 2 of my last 3 or 4 picks, and I was like, I used a different word, but I just murdered you guys with those 2 picks. Boom. And I thought it was a wrap. And now I don't feel so good. I don't feel so strong about it.
Well, okay. So if you could go back last night, having the benefit of what you just heard, would you still have been drafting McCullers? Or least
it was so late. I think it's worth to see how it plays out. It was so late. I mean, who are we talking about here? I don't even know. I don't even recall who was left there. A bunch of scrubs,
Yeah. Well, the point is, you probably wouldn't have pounded the enter key as hard.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have been popping off at everybody like that.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next guy because I feel comfortable with McCullers, at least at this point. And, but there's something to work, I guess, to keep a tab on. But moving along, another young pitcher, Eduardo Rodriguez of Boston Red Sox fame, my arch nemesis, being a Yankee guy. Well, what were your impressions of him coming up last year?
Yeah, I was kind of a fan. I mean, but he was pretty disappointing. I mean, overall, he showed some flashes here and there, which is kind of normal for a young pitcher. So I like the upside. I love those guys. I love those high upside guys. Boston's been nourishing this guy in the minors with lots of nutrients and protein and strong supplements. Get him ready to go. He's good to me, but now I was more concerned with him than McCullers before because his injury sounded like it could keep him out a little bit longer. So I was just told he wasn't even on my radar at all. Like, I'm not even looking at this guy. I thought a guy like Henry Owens or something might take his spot and just run with it. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a spot opening up for him later on as that rotation is still nothing to smile upon. But yeah, I was a little shook, a little scared of his injury.
Yeah, I gotta kind of agree with you, but I thought the upside was high for him. I mean, he like you said, he flashed a little. I think people just get so enamored with these young guys now that they don't want to miss out on somebody that people overreach and overdraft guys. Even McCullers going back, his record wasn't like anything like mind blowing. I think he even had a losing record, but he had a great K number, and he's just so young, and so it's promising. What does the doctor say about Eduardo Rodriguez? I know he's got something going on with his leg, his knee. Is that something that is going to affect him that we should be worried about?
Yeah, I'd love to know. Let's see.
Red Sox Eduardo Rodriguez dislocated his kneecap back in February 27th. Now, this is a big deal. The kneecap covers the knee and allows the muscles to really pull the leg to do the activities you want, from running, jumping, and stabilizing your torso. So for a pitcher, the kneecap is actually a big deal. The timeline is typically 4 to 6 weeks to return back to play. So look for him to return back on the mound middle to late April. When he does get back, I don't expect that you'll see much issues in the velocity off the pitching mound. So again, look for him to be back middle to late April.
Man, I'm completely torn now because the report on McCullers sounded much worse, although the injury from Rodriguez sounds even worse than McCullers. So that just sounds horrific, though, the dislocated kneecap.
Yeah, how do you come back from a dislocated kneecap? My grandpa had his knee replaced. I imagine it's somewhat of a similar procedure, and he ain't been the same ever since. Let me tell you, the women would say the same thing. He just hasn't been quite the same, not the same.
Have you been picking up the slack for him?
No, not usually. Most of these women are 70 and up, and I've been tempted a couple times, but I don't like to take family members' women. It's just something I don't do unless it's a really special woman.
Okay. So, all right. Well, did this make you have any doubts about drafting Rodriguez, or is he somebody you even targeting to begin with?
Yeah, he's not somebody I was really targeting due to the injury. I mean, he's a guy that you draft, they're the later pick or whatever, however you think of him, and then you put him, stash him on your DL. It all happens. How many spots you have in your DL in your league? How long can you keep him there? If you have if you have an injury of a real player you already have, then you got to cut bait anyway and put him there. So, I mean, it's just kind of like if you can stash him and you luck out and you're able to keep him there for a long period of time, hey, great news. Otherwise, you have to wait, and maybe he'll sit on waivers, and then you pick him up a couple weeks before his projected comeback date. That's kind of how I usually play these things. But, I normally love these young pitchers. I kind of live off of drafting these guys a year before they're really expected to kind of take. Like last year, I took Sonny Gray and Garrett Cole and Taijuan Walker. A bunch of guys, like those are the kind of talents I like to target. And now those guys are really high picks, other than Taijuan Walker, obviously. But
would you include Tehran in that as well?
See, I was always been a huge fan of his. I don't know what the hell happened to him last couple of years. I mean, I could definitely see a bounce back for him, though. I mean, his numbers were awful last year. I'm like, what the hell happened to this guy? A couple of years ago, this guy looked like he was on his way to being an elite type pitcher. I'm confused, but sometimes I believe in these guys too long, to a fault. Ask Dominic Brown, but I like to believe in these kind of guys, and sometimes it costs me. But I like Tehran is young enough and talented enough where he could go big.
You mean Dominic Brown, your sleeper at shortstop this year? That same Dominic Brown. We'll get into that at another time. If anybody wants to know that reference, check out the Delights and Disgraces on Razzball, and you'll get exactly what I'm going with. But Eduardo Rodriguez, not to get too far off of the guy we were trying to discuss, I agree with you. He's like one of these young guys that he showed some flashes. Everybody wants to jump and draft too high. Steven Matz is another guy I think is like maybe well deserved if in hindsight when we look back on the year, but he's not somebody I'm gonna reach to take. Rodriguez in the same boat. McCullers was kind of a little bit along that line, but with this news, definitely not somebody I'm looking at immediately, because I want somebody that's gonna start for me from day one. That's what it comes down to. Like, I'd rather take a shot on Juan Nicasio right now, who's just tearing up spring training, the Grapefruit League, whatever league he's pitching in right now. Huh?
I said, I've always been a Nicasio fan. I'm glad to hear that he's doing good things.
Yes. So, I mean, if you have the DL spot, as you mentioned, okay, great. Maybe you could throw him in there, but let somebody else, burn himself on that. That's how I feel, at least. But let's move on to a heartthrob. I mean, this kid is raked and crushed at every level. He's still – I don't even know if he's old enough to legally drink yet, and he's supposedly going to be the Dodgers starting shortstop, but he is in question to start the season on the field, healthy. So I'm talking about Corey Seager. What does the doctor want to tell us about Corey Seager? And what do you want to tell us, Mr. Beddict?
What I want to tell you is,
are you a Dodgers fan now because of Seager? I know you like to change allegiances.
Of course not, man. I don't. I would be if I liked their team. I really don't understand. Really, I'm not enticed by any of these. I'm a Players fan. I like Seager, but I don't really love very many other players on the squad. They got rid of my boy Matt Kemp, who used to run through starlets like shit through pit. I mean, what's the quote? I don't even know. But I used to love Matt Kemp. I love Puig. He fell off. I don't know what's going on with him. They got all these fun. They still haven't cut or got rid of Ethier and Crawford, and Adrian Gonzalez is older. I mean, I just don't like these guys that much. I'm just not really a fan.
I'm completely surprised to hear you gave up on Puig. He's our kind of guy. I'm still in camp.
I didn't give up on him.
All right. Well, it sounded like it. And then on top of it,
I don't know what happened last year.
On top of it, who's Corey Seager's older brother?
Yeah, no, yeah, he plays out here in Seattle. Exactly. Somehow, it's an up-and-coming player, $100 million contract. That is going to be a monster. Somehow ended up with respectable numbers last year, even though he did nothing seemingly for the first few months of the season. I still haven't forgiven him for that. He made the numbers look okay by kind of going on a little tear at the end of the year. Worthless. for fantasy owners, and more importantly, worthless for the Seattle Mariners. Just a total wasted season. Thanks for padding the stats at the end of the year, bro.
Well, just to be clear, we're talking about Kyle and not Corey that you just ranted about. But,
right. Yeah, his brother, more talent, Dodgers. I love the guy. From what I know, without really getting into what my favorite sports doctor has to say, is that, that he's already running, that he's already started working on some lateral stuff, that he's already running. So with him, I think it's just if he misses any time at all, it's strictly precautionary, and it's just the first couple of weeks, and he'll be ready to go. I got no concerns with him. It's not affecting where I'm drafting him at all. If I haven't drafted him yet, but if I do, it won't be because of this injury.
And why haven't you been drafting him? Is he just going too high for your taste?
Yeah, I think he's going a tad higher than I would have. I wouldn't say that higher than I would have expected, but he's just going. It just hasn't worked out that way, draft position wise. I can't really say why. Maybe I'll target him in the next draft just for fun.
All right. Well, let's see what the doctor says.
Corey Seager strained his knee this past week. Now, that's a great thing that he did not tear a meniscus or his ACL, because an ACL tear would have meant he would be lost for the season, and a meniscus tear would mean that he was out 4 to 6 weeks. So a knee strain is not a bad thing, and from the sounds of it, it was a mild knee strain, which means that he should be back in the lineup in about 2 weeks. This is great news for Dodgers fan, and look for him to have a productive year this year, barring any other injury.
All right. Well, that sounds basically like exactly what you were saying, precautionary. He did mention good thing for Dodgers fans, which you've already now alluded to, that you are not in any way, shape, or form. So, Corey Seager, if you were going to be targeting him, if you're going to be drafting him, go for it, because it doesn't seem like there's anything you should be concerned about or worried about. But go into what you were mentioning, and I'm going to get into another player real quick, and this is just my own little rant, and then you can have your own for either endorsing a player or going against them. And I'm going to stick with your neck of the woods in Seattle, and I'm talking about Mr. Ketel Marte. I don't even know if I'm saying his name right. I refer to him as Ketel Marte, but point being is he unfair to him, and I don't know if it's unfair to others, but unfair to him certainly. He's kind of become like the de facto fallback late round shortstop option that, a couple weeks ago, maybe even a couple months ago, people would have felt comfortable endorsing him as a sleeper. Now it almost seems like you take the first shortstop or you take Marte last. And I just think the expectations are being set way too high for this guy. It's just, like I said, it just seems like he's who everybody's endorsing as like that safe late round guy you can pick up to play short. And I know the upside is there. He's shown to be able to bat for average, steal some bases, maybe some power, a little pop here and there. But I mean, this guy, what has he proven exactly? So I guess he's in the same boat as a Seager or Correa for that matter, right? But what's your take on Marte?
Let me just tell you, you're absolutely on point with this. I live here. I got people all across this country talking about Marte like he's some like superstar in the rise or something. I'm like, dude, this guy's been here for years. I hardly knew who the guy was last year, and I write about fantasy baseball for a living. I don't even know who he is.
And adding to that, don't the Mariners have a history of overhyping middle infielders? Don't get me
started on B-Rad, Miller, and the other bump, Franklin. We traded to the Rays. I mean, we've got.
It goes back to Ackley.
They're all supposed to be big prospects. I like this guy a little bit better because he's not white. Personally, it's not really my thing, so I kind of appreciate that about him. But he's got speed. I don't know if there's power. I think the expectations, I'm like, where are these expectations coming from? This guy is not a superstar in the minor leagues. Trust me. He's got some talent, though. I think he'll be okay. But, I mean, as far as, like, if you're going to take him late at the very end of the draft, be my guest, but or whatever. I mean, I don't have that high of expectations for him just because, again, I live here and I'm not pumped about the dude. So, I mean, why these people all over the globe are so hyped on the guy?
You know what, though? I don't even know if they're hyped on him because then they might be telling you to take him early. It's just like the feeling is like he's a safety net. Like he's a safe pick. He's a safe option.
I'd rather take a guy who goes hella late from your squad, I'd rather take a dude like Castro. He still has shortstop eligibility, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd much rather have him. I think he has a nice season.
I would like to open the floor to you and see if there's anybody the elder gods have told you, tapped you on the shoulder and said, this is the guy you need to avoid, or this is the guy you need to have on every roster. Does that guy exist for you?
That's a good question. A guy this year that's going a little higher than maybe his ranking is Taijuan Walker. Again, I get sold on him every year. The last couple of years, he disappointed me major last year, but had that kind of stretch of dominant run. I really think he's going to come through. Where he's going, or at least where he's gone in my last couple of drafts, I think it is a steal because the upside is so big as far as the other pitchers that are around at that point. I'm also swooping up Yu Darvish in every draft because he's going as late as possible. He's one of my favorite pitchers in the game. In my opinion, a top 3 to 4 pitcher overall in baseball. I know he's got the atomic jump, but he's going to miss a couple months, and I think he's going to come back in and kill it. Remember, he did that at kind of the beginning of the season last year, before the season. So I think he's a guy. I mean, he's late. I'm taking him late enough to where it's like it's worth the risk for me. But as far as a must have, you know, I don't really have it, man. I'm just flying raw this year. I don't know. I'm just playing it by ear.
Just best player available that you see as your pick is coming up.
Yeah, you know, I really I'm a big Grichuk fan.
Yeah, okay.
I like the power potential there. I like the potential for him to go off. I know the swing miss ratio is pretty bad. The strikeouts are there, but I could see a monster season there coming.
So I'll give you an A or B then, because I see this a lot on Reddit, which is where I'm trying to carve out my little niche there with fellow Redditors. So great place. Everybody from Reddit checking this out, thank you, appreciate it. But a question I see proposed a lot is Grichuk versus Conforto. Who would you rather have?
Yeah, Conforto is another guy. I'm very intrigued by that guy too.
Okay, you can only have one of those two guys.
Okay, I'm taking both of them, but I'm going to take Grichuk. I'm going to take Grichuk, man. I'm going to take him. I'm going to take the 30, 35 homer potential. Ballpark's a little friendlier in my opinion, and I just like what I saw. I think there's some heavy potential there, man.
All right.
I'm assuming you're taking Conforto.
No, I think Cespedes kind of being back in the mix. I think they have one too many outfielders right now. You got Granderson on a big contract. You got Cespedes obviously on a big contract. Conforto's kind of, I know he's going to have to play his way into the lineup. He's not going to have the benefit of having a couple days where he can, learn on the job.
Who's the starting right fielder or left fielder?
You got Lagares, you got Conforto, and somebody's gonna have to lose at bats. There's no DH. There's another guy too. There's a fifth outfielder. It's escaping me right now. I'm a Yankee fan, not a Met fan. I get pegged into that because I'm such a DeGrom lover, but I'm really not a Met fan. But I like I said, I don't think he is a bad play. I just think he's really gonna have to step his game up and be consistent in order to remain in a lineup on a daily basis. Whereas I think Grichuk, however you say it, I think he's locked into.
Excuse me if I mispronounced his name.
Yeah, I do it all the time with everybody's name, so it doesn't matter. But it might matter at some point. But for this show, it doesn't. I think Grichuk is locked into more guaranteed at bats, even despite some cold streaks. But we'll see what happens. But
I think he's gonna rake. I reached on him a little bit in one draft. I didn't get him in my draft last night, but I think I'm going to go for him again, man. I'm feeling him.
Which one?
Grichuk.
Okay. Well, there you go. You heard it from the other guy. Reach for Grichuk. Reach for Grich. Did we just coin that?
Give him the reach around. There. Get him.
Listen, you can find Mr. Beddict on Razzball. You can find me here on Nickel Press TV. You can check us out on Twitter. You could see some of my stuff on Reddit, as I mentioned, and let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and we're gonna just keep, carving our way at this and try to fine tune it. So thanks for joining us for this first episode, and we'll see what happens with the second one. Anything you want to say before we leave?
Thank you for having me. Most importantly, thank the elder gods for placing me here in this position to so heavily influence our viewers with my baseball knowledge as well as yours. And yeah, man, I'm just glad to be back in the mix. This is going to be fun. It's going to get better as it goes along. I'm just happy to be back on here, man. Thank you.
My man, sounds good. All right, we'll see you next week for another installment.